And welcome back to Finding Faith in Fiction. Today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Woman of Oak Ridge by Michelle Shocklee. I just finished this read as an ARC from NetGalley. It comes out on September 9th, 2025, and I'm so excited to be reviewing this book because I loved it. I thought it would be fun to kind of dress up in 1940s style for this review, just for fun. I can't guarantee I'll always do this on my reviews, but it felt like the right thing to do today. So let's go ahead and get into the review. So, The Women of Oak Ridge is a Christian historical fiction that is based on a true place and a true story. So the characters in the story are fictional. However, many of the events and places described in the book are real. I especially loved this book because my mom lives in Middle Tennessee. I also lived there for several years. And so it was really cool to read a story that was just an hour or two away from where I used to live. And I'm actually going to be visiting Tennessee just next month. And so I'm actually hoping to drive out to Oak Ridge and see some of the historical sites that are still there. So, The Women of Oak Ridge is a dual timeline story set between the 1940s and the 1970s, and it captures the history of the secret town of Oak Ridge, which housed parts of the Manhattan Project in World War II. So this was actually not originally a town on any map. It was created by the government by clearing out thousands and thousands of acres of land and creating this secret city. The main characters in this story are May and Laurel, and they are an aunt and a niece. And Laurel becomes aware that her aunt's town, Oak Ridge, was involved in the construction of Little Boy, which was the first atomic bomb, which was dropped on Japan. Laurel, as a student who is trying to write her thesis on psychology, decides that this would be a cool story to research and write as part of her doctoral thesis. So Laurel goes to visit Aunt May and hopes to learn about her time working in Oak Ridge during the 1940s, but she can tell Aunt May has a secret to keep. So will Laurel uncover the truth behind her aunt's involvement, or will she ruin their bond trying? This was actually my first read of a book by Michelle Shocklee. I have actually a couple of them on my TBR list for this year, but I haven't gotten to them yet. I actually began with this story instead of the others on my list, just because I had the opportunity to read it as an ARC from NetGalley, like I mentioned, which I so appreciate. But after finishing this book, The Women of Oak Ridge, I am an immediate Michelle Shocklee fan. Immediate. I think she's going on my top list of favorite authors, like right now. So she managed to write a really beautiful story of family, of friendship, dark secrets, a little bit of a mystery, while also really teaching you so much about what took place in Oak Ridge during the Manhattan Project. The way she describes the sites at the reservation, which is what it was called at the time, in the 1940s timeline, it was so vivid, so realistic, and you honestly, as you're reading, feel like you were there. Like, it was incredible. I love this time period. I love World War II era in America, and yeah, I was just captivated by especially the 1940s timeline and how much I felt like I was there in that time. So in the 1970s timeline, there were some historical touches. Like, you could tell it was the 1970s, but that definitely wasn't the focus. The authenticity of the 70s, it was definitely on the 1940s timeline, which I appreciated. The 1970s timeline is where Laurel is really trying to uncover this mystery from her aunt's life and what is still haunting her aunt from that time when she was working there at Oak Ridge. So both May and Laurel, our main characters, are both very relatable. When you're reading from either of their perspectives, you're going to be sucked in. The supporting characters as well added really good depth to the story. In particular, the friendship between May and Sissy in the 1940s timeline, as well as May and Velvet in the 1940s timeline, are extremely heartwarming, like really beautiful female friendships that are described. The care, the connection, the nurturing between friends was really, really sweet. And then in the 1970s timeline, we have the slow building relationship between Laurel and Jonas, which was lovely. I'd say it was a very light romance. It was there, but it wasn't overly dominating the story by any means. However, the growing bond between Aunt May and Laurel in the 1970s timeline and how Laurel comes to care for her aunt really steals the show in terms of character relationships in this book. So a couple of highlights that I really enjoyed about this book in particular. There was a slow mystery that takes place. Um, in the story, again, Laurel is kind of trying to figure out what had happened in the 1940s, why her aunt doesn't want to share about that time when all the other people in town seem okay talking about it to help her with her paper. But the mystery really takes its time. It unravels slowly and beautifully. And I don't love heavy mysteries. I often find them very dark. And this one wasn't. It really felt um, authentic to the plot and the story here. And it really drove along the story. While it wasn't like the only thing going on, it definitely, that was kind of the main focus. So I really enjoyed the mystery in this, and I normally don't, so it was really well done. Another thing I really enjoyed was the phenomenal character development, especially with Aunt May. She has a moment at the end that really gets into some themes of like forgiveness and grace through Christ and repentance. Um, Again, that was really well done. So her character arc was really beautiful. Again, and then like the character development in terms of like the relationship, in terms of how Laurel like builds her relationship with Aunt May was really beautiful as well. Another thing that I loved was this book had outstanding historical integration of World War II time era and the Manhattan Project. I already mentioned this, I'm not going to harp on it, but as a huge fan of historical fiction, like beautiful. So well done. I loved it. The dual timeline was another thing that was beautifully well done. I do love a dual timeline if it's a historical fiction, but they're not all equal, right? This one was amazing, and how the story comes to connect in the middle between Aunt May's timeline in the 1940s and Laurel's timeline and Aunt May's in the 1970s, and how they connect is really, really great. I really loved that element. And then another thing that I so much loved about this book was the ending. And I'm not going to give anything away. Um, but there have just been a couple books I've read lately where the ending felt rushed, or it almost felt unrealistic because it got tied up too neatly. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Like that's not super realistic. This ending was so well thought out, and Michelle Lockley, she did not just sweep the conflicts under the rug and like try to tie them up quickly and like, okay, it's done. We're moving on to the resolution. No, she resolved them head on. The characters were willing to like really face the consequences of decisions and deal with the problems that had been going on throughout the book. They didn't just like run away, or they weren't tied up neatly. Like there were really realistic like effects of like all their actions throughout the story. So it was a believable and satisfying ending, which I really, really appreciate in the book. As a psychology minor, I also really liked the thread of like psychology running throughout the storyline as part of Laurel's story. Again, it wasn't overpowering, it was subtle. There were like little things mentioned like through the lens of psychology. But it was really cool how um, Michelle Lockley connected this crazy thing in history that happened that was such a huge secret, um, and how it impacted the people working there at that time and what were the long-term effects of it on them. And that was a really cool angle, I thought, to take. I imagine it would be hard to realize that you had been working for, a place that was creating a weapon of mass destruction. So yeah, what the results of that on your psyche would probably be intense. So I really appreciated that. So overall, I gave this book 5 stars, which for me, giving a book 5 stars means that this is a book I'm definitely going to reread again at least once, maybe more than that. It's a book that I'll likely purchase, and that may be a Kindle version of the story. It might be a physical copy when I can get my hands on it, but I will likely purchase the story. And a story that I feel like is going to linger with me long after I've turned to the last page and finished the book. I finished this book 2 days ago and I'm still actively thinking about it, and I think I will for a long time. This is also a story that inspired me to like do my own research and go on Google Maps and like actually look at the sites. Look at what is it, Big Ed's Pizza, look at the church, look at the old guest house, which is now actually a assisted living facility. Look at K25. Like it inspired me to go look at all those things. So I know that's a 5-star book for me when it makes me want to close the book and then like go do my own research and look at the history myself. Like I said, I want to go visit there next month when I visit, and I'll definitely make a video of that if I do. So 5 stars. I highly, highly recommend this book to anybody who loves historical fiction in general, but especially historical Christian fiction. I will say the Christian elements weren't super heavy throughout the majority of the book, but they did come in strong at the end. Like they were present throughout the story, but the end is really where you have that really deep and beautiful moment. Like I said, of forgiveness and accepting grace through Christ. So that was really, really, really nice and well done. This would also be a great book for people who like elements of mystery that are woven into a story really seamlessly, but without it, again, without it being like too dark or too intense or too suspenseful. If you are sensitive like I am to books like that, this would still be a really great read for you. But even if you like a really intense mystery, I still think this would be a really enjoyable book. And again, a fair warning to all history lovers, this is a book that is going to have a high probability that it's going to inspire you to do your own research and possibly even go visit Oak Ridge, Tennessee after you've read it. So yeah, again, I loved this book. I'm going to reread it probably many times. I would love to add it to my permanent collection. I did receive this Kindle copy from NetGalley and Tindale House in exchange for my honest review. These thoughts are all of mine. And again, I genuinely, genuinely loved this story. And Michelle Shocklee is definitely an author that I'm going to continue reading as many of her books as I can get my hands on. So again, this book is being published on September 9th, which is just a couple days away. Definitely pre-order or get your hands on a copy of this as soon as it comes out. While it wasn't a specifically fall read, I feel like the 1940s vibes give it kind of that fall cozy vibe. So definitely a great book to add to your fall TBR as well. So like I said, go grab yourself a copy. You are not going to regret it. All right, well, thanks for watching this review on The Women of Oak Ridge by Michelle Shocklee. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button so that you will be notified of future videos, book reviews, and recommendations that I put out on this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!